All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give everybody about a minute before we get started just to let them hop in from the last session. So stay tuned, and we're going to be talking about the future of e-commerce operations. Awesome. And then just a reminder that this is the last presentation and session of the Discover Conference. So we have made it to the end. Thanks for sticking with us. Make sure that you stick through the end of this session. There are still prizes to earn before we close out. So I want to make sure that everybody is with us. So I guess it's 3 p.m. We're going to go ahead and get started. So as I had said, we're going to be talking about the future of e-commerce operations. We have a really great and expert panel today to be chatting with us. We have Mo over at Pipe17. We have Ryan from Fabric. And we have Selena from Amour Vert. Mo, would you like to kick us off with some introductions?
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here. Mo Afshar, I'm co-founder of Pipe17. Pipe17 is smart connectivity for e-commerce. So when you're trying to add channels or when you're trying to add ERPs or any other systems, we help everything work really smoothly, especially with Deliver.
Great. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan. I'm Chief Product Officer and co-founder at Fabric. Fabric's a modular commerce platform. We work with mid-market and large retailers and also B2B companies, enabling their e-commerce experience across channels.
Great. Thank you. And Selena.
Hi, everyone. I'm Selena Johnson. I am the former president and COO of Amour Vert, a sustainable fashion brand selling in e-commerce, retail, and wholesale channels.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Mo, I will give you the floor to kick us off here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Megan. So pleasure to be with everybody today. So love to join everybody on this panel talking about e-commerce operations. And this is an area that's kind of very close to our heart, and especially in my heart. Having investigated the whole e-commerce space, I didn't quite realize how broken the whole operational world was until I actually co-founded Pipe17 along with my co-founder Dave. So, one of the things we always ask is like, why is operations painful? And I think it's really interesting because it kind of mirrors a little bit real life, right? Because typically we always do everything right at every stage, but when we look back, life ends up being quite difficult. If you look within the e-commerce world, I think everybody makes the right set of decisions at the time, whether it's systems related or selling channel related, or bringing in new channels like point of sale, etc. But as you grow, what you tend to find is the complexity really builds up over time, and that introduces headaches. So what do we do as people? We hire people to address those problems, and before you know, that whole complexity ends up costing an army in terms of people. And those of you who are running businesses perhaps out of your home or working with a 3PL such as Deliver, you're starting on that journey to getting to your dreams. But at the same time, there's also kind of complexity within that world. And of course, there are a bunch of unknowns, and we kind of learned this through the COVID pandemic, especially, obviously, because people change the rules, and we saw kind of Amazon change the rules with respect to what they were taking in through places like FBA. So effectively, what ends up happening is we always end up chasing things that are stuck and things that are not working well as ops team. And that kind of tends to get more and more painful. And if you look at kind of, the journey of an order, you kind of get to understand why. We're not even thinking about the supply side, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later, where there's a tremendous amount of complexity. But if you look at it, you've got these workflows where you've got doing sales across multiple channels, and then you add 3PLs, and then you want to do point of sale, and then maybe you do pop-ups. And before you know it, life gets really, really complicated. And trying to get people to get these systems to talk to one another and download spreadsheets and run your business off, QuickBooks and spreadsheet, it kind of works for a while, but it tends to run, into a very difficult corner after a while, where your volume is building up and you're finding that you're having to do, a lot of the work yourself. And that's why we built Pipe17 effectively as a connectivity platform for all those merchants out there, small and large, in order to help connect everything within your world, things like product catalog information to get it pushed to your 3PL, things like orders to get them routed from, for example, a selling channel like Shopify, all the way through to a 3PL such as Deliver, to get your point of sale transactions flowing properly into your ERP so you can account for them. And to do all of this, in a very automated way without having to hire developers, which everybody's trying to get you to do as you scale. And of course, it's a big enabler to the whole headless revolution because, headless is really about, giving much better experiences over time and evolving your platform. And when you evolve it, connectivity becomes a really big concern. And we also actually have advanced features in there. So if you're, for those of you who are kind of a little bit bigger, perhaps things like, being able to do orders across multiple 3PLs or having to deal with kits and bundles, which is always fun because you've got things you want to pull together so people can save money. And all of those things are things that are supported within our platform. And I think one of the greatest things about working with Pipe17, and here's a plug for Deliver, is that, we're great partners together because we really enable, merchants as they grow to get this connected commerce experience from top to bottom, whether it's, in our case, supporting additional selling channels that perhaps aren't supported through Deliver yet, or, ERPs like, NetSuite, Sin7, Brightpearl, Microsoft Dynamics, the list goes on. So very excited at this opportunity and we're here to help all of those merchants out there who have connectivity challenges, which I think is just about everybody there. And there are lots of customers using it. So no brand is too small or too big. We have, brands who are running thousands of orders a year to brands who are running millions of orders a year through the platform. So it's something that applies for you as you grow, which is kind of one of the unique things I think about Pipe17. So with that, as promised, I wanted to hand over to Selena, who will introduce herself a little bit and take them through their journey around e-commerce operations and how she set about trying to simplify the world. So Selena, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Mo. I appreciate it. I will not bore you with all the details of my bio, but what I can tell you is that I have been working in e-commerce for a long time in many startup and growth companies, have run operations and a number of other functions, and have seen a lot of the challenges firsthand of trying to scale an e-commerce business. Including on the demand delivery chain and the supply chain side. So that's probably enough about me. And then talking a little bit about how Amour Vert works with Pipe17. So as I mentioned, Amour Vert is a sustainable fashion brand. So we produce all of our own clothing. So that means we have raw material inputs, fabric, and that has inventory as well as finished goods inventory that we sell. Also mentioned sell in multiple channels, wholesale, retail, and e-commerce, and lots of SKUs and lots of changing SKUs. So fashion business, it's not the same 20 SKUs all the time. It's new collections every single month and changing all the time. And so couple that with some pretty rapid growth, and there's a lot of complexity that comes from there. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to this is, exactly as Mo said, the business had built up one step at a time, putting together various systems, and what we were left with was kind of this conglomeration of systems, each of which doing the thing that they do decently well, but none of them really talking to each other. And what we had in between was people, doing analysis in spreadsheets, downloading information from one system and uploading it into another system, to the point where, we didn't even have a real understanding of what our basic COGS were because we didn't have the accurate data that we needed from the systems. And then in addition, you spend all your time basically trying to piece together this data, and that which creates a lot of errors. And so all you're doing is kind of this administrative work and then trying to chase down errors, which ultimately creates not only inefficiency, but bad customer experience, right? And so in particular, we had issues with our inventory accuracy, which, listen, no inventory is ever going to be 100% accurate, no matter how big your business is or how good your systems are. But there's, acceptable and not acceptable in terms of inventory accuracy. And when you're too far off, we have both stockouts and oversells, which ultimately impact the customer experience. And that's really what the point of all this is, right? The reason why you want this foundation of really stable, smooth operations is to enable the customer experience that you want to give to your customers. So we worked with Pipe17, and I will say, just, as a plug, the team is a pleasure to work with. And I have worked with many vendor partners over the years, and they're not all a pleasure to work with by any stretch. But the Pipe17 is good people, and they really kind of took care of us from beginning to end in the process. And so I couldn't recommend them anymore, if not for anything else than just for that. But the software is good too. So basically we kind of put Pipe17 at the middle of this hub of different systems, and what that enabled us to do was to kind of get a clean look at what was happening, and to get a good understanding of a consolidated look at orders, at inventory, etc. It helped clear up a lot of the inventory inaccuracies that we had in our system, removed a lot of manual processes that we had, and it just made a big difference in terms of allowing our team to focus on what can really drive the business, what can drive customer experience and efficiency, and spend less time focusing on troubleshooting problems and errors. I will say, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next slide, is it's not perfect and it never will be. And so I think making sure that everyone kind of has that expectation is important, because I think sometimes we think that, oh, I'm going to get to this like ideal state in my operations where everything is running smoothly and it's all figured out and everything is connected and it's super easy. And that has never happened in any business that I've worked in. And I've worked in, at Walmart and some of the biggest companies known for their operational excellence, and it doesn't work that way in those businesses either. So I do think it's important to have a realistic goal in mind when it comes to this, but I will say that Pipe17 made a huge difference in terms of us being able to focus on what was important in the business and spend less time in this translating things from one system to another. Mo, anything you want to add on that front? Okay, I will keep going. And then we talked about, Mo asked me to just put a few thoughts down on, scaling e-commerce operations. And there's probably more to it than what I can put in, 6 bullet points on a slide, but I'll try to give kind of my best pieces of advice or wisdom based on not knowing any of the details of any of your businesses. But the first one is, having a stable foundation for the core customer experience. And this is kind of back to what we were talking about before. Ultimately, it all has to start with the customer experience. Are they getting the right product on time? What is the customer service experience like? What is the returns experience like? And that's where you really have to start, and then look for any areas where there's any either problems or weaknesses there, and then look at the breadcrumbs trail all the way back to where the problems are originating, and really focus on solving any issues there, shoring up any cracks, and looking for opportunities where you may need to add additional resources so that you can scale. And I think I say this, it sounds obvious, but I say this because a lot of times when we're thinking about scaling, we're thinking about efficiencies, right? Reducing costs, which is absolutely important. And it doesn't matter, cost reduction doesn't matter at all if you're not delivering on the core customer experience. And I do think it's easy to forget that. And no offense to any software vendors present, but there are always software vendors in your inbox telling you how you're going to save money doing X and Y and Z, and that is good, and those opportunities are important. But again, first and foremost is nailing that core customer experience and making sure that that the back end behind that is delivering on what it needs to. The second point is around flexibility and agility, and I know Mo talked about this a lot. If there's anything that we've learned in the last year and a half, it's that things will change. And I think this goes back to this idea that there's no magical endpoint for what the operations of your business are going to look like. It will always be changing. There will always be problems. Your business will change. The world will change. Vendors will go out of business. You'll add a new channel. There'll be a global pandemic. You never know what's going to happen. And so having the ability to be flexible is really important, and to be able to move quickly. Now, that's not the easiest thing to do. And one way to do it is to build out all kinds of, additional redundant infrastructure, et cetera. But nobody here has the time or the resources to do that. And so I think this is really about, as I said, kind of lower down on this slide, is making contingency plans. And if nothing more than just thinking through, if this vendor went away, what are my other options? If this supplier couldn't supply me anymore, what other choices do I have? And just having some of those even initial conversations, a phone call with somebody, so that if and when something happens, it's not the first time you're thinking about this problem. How do I switch? How do I change? So it's not about, again, building, systems with multiple redundancies, et cetera. I think it's more about a mind frame around thinking through, if something goes wrong, if something changes, what are my other options available here? And then just a couple other points I would say, again, no offense to any of the software vendors here, because I'm definitely all about systems, but process is fundamental, meaning it doesn't matter what systems you have. If you don't have good processes, you're gonna have to create the processes before you make the system work anyway. So you might as well kind of focus on that now. And in particular, and this is like sounds like a silly point, but there is so much probably of your operational processes that lives in the heads of your employees. And I know this has been true at, basically every company that I've worked with, except for those biggest ones. But companies in the multi-million of dollars of business, and there's so much of operations that is just in people's heads, and that can be hugely disruptive. People leave, things change, and it's very, very difficult to recreate these things from thin air. And so I would just say, as a caveat to this, process is fundamental, is write it down. Even if you think like you're too small, if it's too small of a process, it's never going to happen. I'm the owner and founder of the business and it's in my head. Like, please write it down, whatever it is. It will make your life so much easier, whether you're implementing a system or not, because as we said before, the only constant is change, and having some documentation of whatever your process is, even if it's a totally, cockamamie process, will help you so much in kind of taking whatever next step and adapting to whatever changes come your way. And then, focusing on what you can control. Mo and I were chatting about, what do you do about when you have, FedEx and the post office have carrier issues or, have delays? And the answer is, like, you don't do anything, right? Like, you and me and Mo and Ryan, we're not going to solve the post office's delays, nor are we going to solve FedEx and UPS's delays. So all we can do is, communicate with our customers as effectively as we can, focus on the things that we can't control, and then, not worry too much about the rest. And then finally, every business is unique and there's no right answer. People ask all the time, like, should I have my own DC or should I do a 3PL? Should I go headless? When should I do it? Should I be in this channel or not? Should I do retail or not? And the answer is it really depends on your business, and it depends on the size and stage of your business and the particulars. So, don't be afraid to make what is the right decision for your business at the time. And with that, I will hand it over to Ryan.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Oh, wait, sorry. Mo, I think Mo had one more thing.
No worries. Thank you so much, Selena. Really appreciate the overview, and I think it's a great thing in terms of like just you need to think in a flexible way, because at the end of the day, so many things are not in your control. So a quick shout out for the survey. So we're giving away lots of goodies. I know these Apple AirTags are really useful because I know one set of my keys is sitting somewhere on the I-5 freeway. If anybody's driving around Seattle, please pick them up for me. Not seriously, not serious. Please don't endanger your life. But anyways, the bit.ly Pipe17 OIMS survey. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Megan, I think, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mo and Selena. Next, we're going to be hearing from Ryan over at Fabric. So Ryan, I'll give you the floor here.
Thank you. So just a quick introduction of myself. I have been in my career an operator at scale, working over at 3 companies that did over $10 billion in e-commerce revenue. So have been a merchant, have been a marketer, have been an inventory planner, and have led teams that build products and solutions as well for these large-scaled enterprises. And over time, we've probably gained a whole bunch of scar tissue and learnings through our operational experiences. And so part of the impetus for starting Fabric, the modular commerce platform, was really to take those learnings and apply those and bring those to the market as well. So I'll talk a little bit about Fabric and how we think about the current state and the future state of commerce and commerce operations. So first off, there's a buzzword in the industry called Headless Commerce, and Fabric is a headless commerce platform. And what that means is it's a simple architectural definition that talks about the separation of the front end and back end of your e-commerce experience. Now, as you grow and as you scale as a business, you have to think about many different things. You have to think about your brand positioning and how do you differentiate your brand experience, your service level and customer experience. You then have to think about your product selection and how do you become a destination for a category or multiple categories. You have to think about your distribution methods and considering, if you're a retailer, do you sell in physical environments? Do you sell on marketplaces? Do you sell wholesale to others as well? And then that again brings in a whole set of questions around your supply chain logistics and fulfillment capabilities as well. And so with Fabric, what we did is we actually took a step back and said, what's the architecture that will allow for flexibility, right, as you grow and as you scale? And we felt that the separation of the front end and back end, and actually the separation of all the different domains of commerce, were really important. And so how does headless commerce work? It essentially means that we've broken down the commerce journey into discrete units. And who did this? Is this a new architectural construct? Not really. The kind of OG or first company to do this at scale was actually Amazon back in 2006, 2007. There's a story that Jeff Bezos effectively told the whole company that you must servicify everything that you're doing. So build everything as a service, and then other teams can use it. And that's why they can move and scale a new business unit very quickly, because you have all these Lego blocks to go and pick up and start to use. Versus before a very monolithic architecture where everything is contained in one kind of architecture, where if you change something over here, it's going to break something over here, versus the parallel kind of improvements that you can make across your stack as you break it down into services, right? And so it gives you the speed and flexibility, but we didn't really end there. The thing that really I think differentiates Fabric and it really is important for the commerce operations organizations is the platforms that you're currently sitting on are legacy and monolithic, and they were built very rigid. However, your business needs to change your business model. You need to continue to improve your customer experience. You need to differentiate your service level. And so all of those differentiations are very difficult to do in the current platforms. As Mo mentioned, and especially in commerce operations, the kind of default is to go hire more engineers to make everything work together. However, now with new software from Pipe17, from Fabric, we think of configuration first. So how do you configure to your differentiation versus the complexity of customization that's happened in the past? And so with headless commerce software, you're really thinking about that flexibility of expanding or changing your business model, changing your user experience, and giving all of the benefits that you see here to your users, all the way from faster page speed time to better customer experiences to integrating with existing systems. At Fabric, I was previously at very large companies, as I mentioned, and the one thing that we all despised was the point of trying to move from antiquated software to new software. That's called a replatforming project. And no one in the world loves a replatforming project. It burns your current team out. It's highly risky, and it's expensive, and it's long. And so with the new commerce tools that you see in the market, like Pipe17 and Fabric, we actually recommend a modular approach to transitioning from spreadsheets to advanced software, from monolithic systems to services-based systems like Fabric as well too, just to de-risk the situation. And so as we think of Fabric, we actually offer capabilities and solutions across the entire commerce journey, again, broken down into business solutions. So as we talk with retailers, direct-to-consumer companies, or B2B companies, we say, what's your biggest pain point? Where do you think you can either get the most value or have the most opportunity? And start there and start to evolve your systems-based architecture to a services-based architecture. So for example, one of our larger customers is GNC. And GNC, when we met with them, they were going through a full digital transformation, 2,000 plus stores, online, international, all the complexities you could imagine of a scaled enterprise. And one area of opportunity that they saw was to accelerate the time that they could bring on new products into market. They have a very loyal customer base. However, they had very rigid internal ERP systems that didn't allow them to build out a long tail of product or selection. And so we implemented our Fabric PIM, Product Information Master, to be able to serve and speed up the operational processes just to onboard and enrich product content and get it live to site much quicker, going from days and weeks to minutes to be able to launch a new product on the site. So as you think about your operations, really, you're always thinking about the exception cases or the challenges that you may have, and start to attack those, fundamentally with new software, and do it in a way that's very iterative, so you reduce the risk and increase the time that you actually can make changes. Obviously, as an operator, and I've been there, you're really thinking on a quarterly basis, and how do I impact the quarterly results is the question I think that most of you in the audience are thinking about. And so with that, you need that fast and flexible software. Out of our product portfolio that we have at Fabric, one of the, I think, one of the best pieces of our software is our order management platform. And we built this from all of that scar tissue and learning from those scaled enterprises where we've dealt with pretty antiquated and legacy order management platforms. So really got to rebuild it from first principles, thinking about how do we give flexibility to the operations teams to enable all of the business model changes that you may need. If you're, have a store network, how do you start to think of your stores as distributed warehouses where you can ship from store, buy online, pick up from store, and do all the last mile kind of delivery? How do you start to do the complex kind of bundling and kitting as we mentioned before, and order splitting and order kind of articulation across all of the different supply chain logistics and fulfillment providers. So with that, really, I think the lesson here is you have to have a lot of flexibility within your process because you'll be learning day to day from your customers to improve your experiences and your service levels. And you need to mirror that now with software that will allow you that flexibility to learn and move much quicker than you've been able to in the past, so you can keep up with the customer who's always interested in getting a better experience quicker. So with that, I think I'll hand it back over, and I believe we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan and Mo and Selena. Those were great. Ryan, you had mentioned the pain points that company was facing. What are some of the most common pain points that Mo and Ryan, or even Selena, that you've seen personally for e-commerce businesses? I mean, especially after a pandemic and going into the new year here.
Yeah, I think the way I saw really the pandemic impact many companies that we work with, all the way from direct to consumer to retail to B2B, was really throughout those long-term 5-year plans or 3-year plans, and you had to react to the market very quickly. And the pain that I saw was really fundamental. As we heard, probably the number one piece of software used in e-commerce is still Microsoft Excel, which, credit to that product, it's obviously stood the test of time. However, to be able to run and scale your business, you got to have better software. And so making sure that you have real-time visibility of your inventory, and making sure that you have real-time visibility and control of your supply chain logistics and fulfillment, and the insights to glean to be able to solve for those constraints or solve for those issues very quickly is important, because your customer doesn't care if your inventory is not synced with your order management system. They just care, did I get my package, yes or no, and did it arrive on time? And so very important just to nail the fundamentals of operations, right? Do I know where my products are? Do I know the exceptions that are happening downstream and upstream? Are my customer service and sales organizations able to react to that extremely quickly? I think are just the fundamentals. So I always tell people, don't go on to the new advanced project until you've nailed each of the basics.
Right, that makes total sense.
Yeah, I would perhaps add kind of a couple of things which are not so much software related. I think a lot of folks these days, frankly, if they haven't figured out how they're going to get their goods in to a warehouse for the holidays, they're probably going to miss it. Either they're going to have to, figure out how to pay, for air shipping, which is pay $100,000 instead of paying $10,000 or $20,000 for a container, or which we've seen some customers do, just drop ship it straight from, places like, Hong Kong, which actually, ironically, it costs a few bucks more per parcel, but depending on what you're shipping, it may make sense. So a lot of people thinking out of the box in terms of, how to address the crunch that everybody knows is there already, and Harish talked about this morning.
Awesome. Yeah, and then Selena, have you seen any specific roadblocks, especially going into the new year, that your team has had to be extremely flexible for? I know that was another trend that the three of you had talked about, was just that aspect of flexibility. How important has that been for you?
I think specific in particular to the kind of pandemic times is just the whole supply chain, as we've known it, has been massively disrupted. And that's everything. Amour Vert manufactures almost exclusively in the US. And so while there have been different disruptions than from folks who are sourcing goods primarily, in the Far East, that there have been disruptions as well. I don't think it's worth saying that, I don't think that we've seen a disruption of this nature in the whole, global economy and supply chain ever in my lifetime, at least. And so that's been a huge issue. Just, basically understanding lead times have completely changed, whether it's US based or overseas, and really having to figure out, what does that mean? How do you account for that for the future? And then what do you do in the short term, right? When you were planning on a 6-week lead time and now you're looking at a 12-week lead time, and what does that mean for what you can actually put in front of your customer at that time? And that involves a lot of flexibility, agility, and trying to move things, around. And I think also transparency with the customer is really important. I do think if you let customers know what's going on, they can be understanding. Like they live in the world, they know there's a pandemic also, but it's when they don't know what's going on that they can get really frustrated. And so that's definitely been a shift, is having to communicate much more with customers, be very transparent about what's happening and why, and helping them understand why their expectations may have to shift around, how things are going to go versus how they went before.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know we're a little bit over time here, so I'm going to wrap it up. I know there are some really good Q&As or questions over in the chat, so we'll make sure to get those answered in the follow-up. But I would just want to personally say thank you to the three of you for joining us. Super insightful, super helpful. I'm sure the audience thought so as well. And I'll let Nabil close out the Discover conference.
Hi, everyone. As you know, my name is Nabil. I lead marketing here at Deliver. I just want to start off by saying thank you to the panelists at this session, Mo, Ryan, Selena. I think it's really important for us to talk about, what is it that e-commerce businesses do at the end of the day, which is moving products to your customers, and understanding how operations work is really important in that. So you've touched on it today, and our CEO, Harish Abbott, spoke about it in his keynote address today as well. Just to kind of wrap up the conference, I also want to thank everyone who attended, all of the other speakers who ended up, presenting at the various panels that we had. We really wanted this to be an experience where we're building a community around e-commerce building and how to scale and grow your brand. So we've heard topics about obviously operations now, but also how to grow your business top of funnel, how to get better ads and efficiency there. So a wider range of topics, and we really are thankful for all of you to attend. Just wanted to share some quick wrap up notes and comments, and then we'll close it off. So overall at Discover, we had $100,000 worth of prizes that were handed out. We had 180 prize winners out of that pool, 5,000 different merchants and attendees who've been reached through this conference, 30 different speakers, and 10 hours of learning. So really an incredible way for all of us to come together, and I appreciate each and every one of you for coming and showing up. Follow-up note, we will be sending out recordings to our registrants only, exclusive access for them through email, so please tune in. And there will be prizes and other items that we're handing out from our speakers. Like Mo mentioned, there's going to be prizes for the survey responses on his survey. There are similar prizes for some of our other speakers that we will hand out via email, that we'll coordinate via email after the session. So one final time, thank you so much to our speakers, to our attendees, and everyone else. Thank you so much. Bye.